Oh, oh, North Carolina. Geez. Okay.
It's nice.
It's on the road.
It's nice.
Welcome
here
to Garden
too.
of the Spirit, class
Okay.
studying apples from the orchard for the second time, beginning after Pesach 2014.
Okay.
This class meets in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, the center of the universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe, Margaret Vogel, blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contains selections of teachings of Kabbalah from the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portion, superbly translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski. We're on page 306. The second on Bo. Now this is long. It'll be close to 15 pages. We will not do it in one day. Okay, here we go. Look what I found. I'll forget.
Oh, sure. I'm here and he's there.
Here, but you're there instead.
Right. You came in my place.
No, I came in my place. You should be here.
Well, I would be, but I'm tutoring right after this.
Are we ready?
Ready.
You're not on camera.
Ready.
Yeah, say it out loud.
We should devote the learning tonight to Michael Rosen's memory. I'm sure everyone's in favor of that.
Yeah, but Abigail doesn't know who it is.
No,
Dr. Michael Rosen was a pillar in the community, a learned man, a wonderful philanthropist, and a doer of only good. Unfortunately succumbed to the disease that he was a renowned specialist in. So fortunately passed away this morning.
I think
today.
Machal Chaim ben
And
Yitzchak Yosef.
Yosef.
They said.
Today is the day that my mother died 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. That's special all around. Thank you, Rudy. At the beginning of the 8th plague, Hashem told Moshe, I have hardened his heart, that I may place these signs of mine in his midst. 3 questions stand out. Why does Hashem call them signs and not plagues? 2, why does he add the word these? And 3, why does he say in his midst? Hashem could have just said that I may place my plagues upon him, would fit much better and sound much smoother than this. Okay, so we're going to begin 306. Alan, are you ready?
ready.
Okay, go ahead.
And Hashem said to Moshe, come to Pharaoh, for I have made his heart heavy, and the heart of his servants, that I may place these signs of mine in his midst, so that you can tell your children and grandchildren how I mocked Mitzrayim, and about my signs that I placed in them, so that you can know that I am Hashem, Havaya. Keep going.
Yes, 307 at the top.
We should ask, why does this verse not read that I may place these plagues of mine in his midst? Why does it refer to these signs of mine? Why does it read in his midst instead of upon him?
Okay, so they leave out the question. The translation leaves out the question of these. A minute. Okay. Egypt was like, okay, where's this going? I was not expecting this. Egypt was the first of 4 exiles, Golos, of the Jewish people. Each exile suppressed a different part of the body of holiness. In one, it suppressed the head. In another, the torso. In another, the feet. Now, this is important. Exile means that something is restrained. It does not have freedom of movement, or it's not free to express itself. You're not in your natural habitat. It's like someone who's in prison or in a straitjacket and does not have freedom of movement, or like a musician who broke his hand and cannot express himself through his music. This is exile. We're not free to be ourselves. We're not free to serve Hashem the way we usually do. In our context, and therefore I should say that exile exists even today in the land of Israel, because there are a lot of mitzvahs that we're not able to keep. In our context, Klippa takes control of specific limbs, metaphorical limbs, and constrains them. Okay, go ahead, Alan, and stop after the bold.
Okay. In order to answer this, know that the 4 exiles differed one from the other. In one, evil enveloped the head of holiness. In one, it enveloped the torso. In one, it enveloped the feet. The common denominator, however, is that in all exiles, evil envelops holiness and conceals it. The allusion to this is in the verse, "The wicked crowns the righteous."
Okay. What's that? The prophet, that is from the prophet Habakkuk, the wicked crowns the righteous. The prophet Habakkuk begins his book with a cry that injustice is prevalent and not stopped. He mentions wicked surrounds the righteous. Nebuchadnezzar surrounds Judah to harass and persecute them. This verse supports the idea that exile has a hold on holiness and restricts its freedom of movement. That the wicked surrounds the righteous means that it's got a stranglehold on the righteous. Okay, go ahead with the regular text.
Each exile obstructed a certain aspect of holiness, keeping it from shining and spreading its corresponding level of divine consciousness into the world. By surviving and overcoming these exiles, the Jewish people neutralized the corresponding powers of evil to oppose holiness. The word for crowns in the verse quoted, machtir, means surrounds, just as a crown surrounds and encompasses the head.
Okay. There are 4 exiles of the Jewish people, and we speak about this many times, especially in Medrash. Egypt, Babylon is one. We count them here as one. Media, Persia is one. Greece and Rome. Okay, so Babylon was after the first Beis Hamikdash. First Beis Hamikdash destroyed in 3338 in the Hebrew calendar. The English calendar, I'm gonna guess probably the 5th century before the Common Era was. I'm sorry, around the 5th century before the Common Era. We went to Babylon. We were there. I don't remember. I think maybe 52 years or so, and then Persia conquered Babylon. So Persia took over from that. So here they're counted as 2 different exiles. Babylon and Persia together were 70 years between the 2 temples. During the Second Temple, we had Greece. as what most popular through we know about it through the story of Hanukkah, and then Rome came and destroyed the temple, and that was the fourth exile that we're still in today, which would mean that the exile of Greece was during the time of the temple. Interesting. We will see that Kabbalistically, let's see if we can get nothing. We will see it Kabbalistically, Egypt and Babylon were similar and are counted as one. Torah says 4 rivers left the Garden of Eden. The Medrash associates the 4 rivers with the 4 kingdoms that would subjugate Israel. The Torah doesn't call them 4 rivers. The Torah calls them 4 heads that leave the garden. The river leaves the garden, and then 4 heads from the river. I don't know if in English we talk about the head of the river. We certainly have a mouth of a river. So this idea that it calls them heads, a Medrash connects with the 4 nations that dominate Israel. Hashem, the Medrash says as follows: Hashem is destined to give the cup of doom to the nations of the world to drink, from the place whence judgment goes forth. The name of the first is Pishon. That's the first river. This is Babylonia. As it says, Ufashu Farashav. Its horsemen are many. And it referring to Babylon, and the first word there, Ufashu, meaning many, is like the name Pishon. So the first river is a reference to, can be seen as a reference to Babylon. And it continues as this river, the one that encircles the entire land of Havilah. This intimates that Babylonia ascended and encircled the entire land of Israel. The point here is that the 4 rivers, the first one is a hint for Babylon, and I left out. It's also others interpret it that it's a reference to Egypt. So we see that that Egypt and Babylon, that they share something in common, and therefore we could consider them as one exile. Next, we're going to show Kabbalistically why they are considered one exile. Okay, Alan, go ahead.
You might think that there are 5 exiles: Mitzrayim, Babylonia, Media, Persia, Greece, and the present exile. So how can we speak of only 4? The answer is that each Mitzrayim and Babylonia were equivalent, equally deep, and of the same nature. Our sages indicated this by saying Pishon refers to Babylon. Pishon refers to Mitzrayim. The 4 rivers that originated in the river that watered the Gan Eden express the consciousness of divine oneness present in the garden, splitting into the consciousness of plurality that informs reality outside the garden. Thus, they epitomize the idea of exile, that is, the state of lower or non-Hashem consciousness that leaves us with the impression that the world is governed by a plurality of opposing forces. This gives rise to the disorientation and confusion that characterizes the state of exile.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Homiletically, the verse, a river went forth from Eden to water the garden. From there it divided and became 4 heads, is taken to allude to the 4 archetypal empires, which the Midrash lists as Babylonia, Media and Persia, Greece, and Edom, Rome.
Okay. We read in the last, now we're going to explain what Egypt and Babylon have in common Kabbalistically, that they can be considered the same exile. We read in the last chapter that the three ministers of Egypt correspond to the three channels in the throat. And Paro's name is the same letters as the neck. So the exile of Egypt had a stranglehold on the neck of holiness. Go ahead, Alan.
Egyptian exile, evil clothed the neck of holiness, that is, the three highest sephiros, all at once. In the Babylonian exile, evil clothed the head of holiness, as it is written, you are the head of gold. Of this it is written, her, that is, Yerushalayim's enemies, were the head, meaning that they clothed the holy head. Thus, these two exiles were equivalent. That is why they are counted as one.
Okay, excuse me. Let me read 6. Daniel was a Jewish advisor to King Nebuchadnezzar during the Babylonian exile. He informed the king of a dream of the king. The king had a dream. He forgot the dream. It frightened him. He freaked out. He called his wise men and asked them to tell him his dream. They said, how can we? He said, look, if you tell us, it doesn't work like that. You tell us the dream, we can tell you what it means, but we can't tell you the dream. You were sleeping.
Rich
And
people.
what?
Rich people.
Yeah. And the king, actually, it gets worse. The king sent them all to be executed.
Naturally.
And Daniel heard about this. He ran to the executioner. He said, stay the execution. Don't kill anyone yet. And then he ran to the king. It's much more at length than what I'm saying it. And then he ran to the king and he said to the king, I'm here. I'll help you. I'll help you figure it out. So this was the dream. A huge statue. I'm sorry. This is a quote from the book of Daniel, and it's near the beginning, so you guys can look it up. Chapter 2. It's very interesting how it reads. A huge statue. This statue, which was immense and whose brightness was extraordinary, stood opposite you, and its appearance was fearsome. This statue, its head of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of copper, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of earthenware. In the dream, a stone struck the feet of the statue, and the entire statue crumbled and turned to powder. The different parts of the statue refer to different exiles of the Jewish people, different powers that will dominate the Jewish people. So Daniel continued with the explanation. He said, you whom the King of Kings has given a strong kingdom, power, and honor. You are the head of gold. So from here we see that gold is a metaphor for Bavel, and the head is a metaphor for Bavel. We've had this a few times, at least. The exile of Egypt affects the neck, and the exile of Babylon affects the head. Since the neck is the channel that carries the flow from the head to the rest of the body, they are considered the same. And this is why Egypt and Babylon are considered one exile. Go ahead, Alan.
The book of Daniel opens with the story of Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, in which he saw a great statue, the various parts of which represented the empires that would dominate the exiles. The head represented Babylonia. The torso and arms represented Media and Persia. The torso represented Greece, and the legs represented Rome. Interestingly, even if we equate Mitzrayim and Babylonia, as the Arizal suggests, if we count Media and Persia separately, we are still left with 5 exiles. Mitzrayim, Babylonia, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome, not 4. We're going.
Okay. Thank you. The exile of Media and Persia affect the arms. The exile of Greece affects the torso, and the Roman and current exile affects the legs. 2 legs, one for Edom, Rome, which is Christianity, and the other Yishmael, which is Islam. These were both outcomes of the Roman exile.
Speaking of Medea and
I looked it up last time. I'll look it up again. Okay. Where did I look it up? Okay. Jim, Media and Persia.
Media and Persia clothe the arms of holiness. This is why they are counted as 2, inasmuch as there are 2 arms. Greece clothes the torso. It is therefore counted as 1. In the present exile, evil clothes the legs of holiness. There are therefore 2 aspects to it, Edom and Ishmael, corresponding to the 2 legs and the feet. The former Roman Empire, which is Europe and North Africa, was inherited by Christianity and Islam.
Okay.
This-
Look at this. In Tillim, King David writes, who have scorned the heels of your Mashiach. He refers to the heels because this exile affects the feet. And in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, the stone struck the statue's feet. Okay, go ahead.
This is alluded to in the verse, who have defamed the heels of your Messiah. Since this exile is that of the feet, that is why it is written, and the stone smote the image on its feet. This exile is the final one before the advent of the Messiah. Both Christianity and Islam have corrupted the doctrine of Messiah. The downfall of the whole statue of exile will be a blow to its feet, that is, to this final exile.
Okay. The Egyptian exile affected the throat, and we're going to focus here on the Egyptian exile. The Egyptian exile affected the throat because Paro restrained the neck of holiness. As we have said, the letters of Paro are the same as the neck. Pei, Resh, Ayin, Hey, Hey, Ayin, Resh, Pei. The neck is also the back side of the throat, and the back is where Klippa resides. Go ahead.
The Egyptian exile is referred to as encompassing the throat, for Pharaoh was situated on the neck of holiness, which is opposite the throat. The word Pharaoh, Pei, Resh, Ayin, Hey, permutates to spell the neck. Ha, Oref, Hey, Ayin, Resh, Pei.
Okay. 10. The source of everything is divine energy, even Klippa. However, although the path to holiness is direct, the path to Klippa is elusive and contorted. I couldn't think of really good words there, but it's a discombobulated path. This is compared to someone who hands something reluctantly and therefore passes it over his shoulder so he does not have to face the recipient of his gift. Therefore, the path to Klippa is called behind. Klippa cannot exist if it received its life force directly, face to face. As our sages state, the wicked do not greet the Shekhinah. In Hebrew, the term for greet is to receive the face of, implying face-to-face contact. And this is why Paro is the same letters as the neck, and we talk about Paro getting his nourishment or siphoning off his nourishment from the back of the neck. as opposed to the throat or anything on the front. Go ahead, Jim.
This is because evil can never face holiness directly, for holiness is a great light, and this blinds evil. This is the mystical meaning of our sage's statement that the wicked do not greet the Shekhinah, for they cannot face it directly. Rather, they are attached to it from the back, facing the Shekhinah's back, and this is how they derive their sustenance. In Hebrew, the idiom for to greet is literally to receive the face up. If we imagine the forces of evil as cosmic leeches or other such sucking creatures, the imagery of them sucking off the back of the body conveys the idea that they receive only minimal life force from holiness. The front of the body houses much more vitality and sources of higher quality life force.
Okay, the Hebrew word yanika, which could mean sucking, or it could mean nourishment. So we might find either of those words here. And it is used to describe what we talked about, the interception of divine light by Klippa. Paro was facing the neck. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Paro nourished from the neck, which contains 3 channels: the trachea, the esophagus, and the blood vessels. The neck is where the intellect of the brain is constricted on its way to the heart. Constriction is associated with the name Elokim. The gematria of Elokim, Aleph, Lamed, He, Yud, Mem, is 86. 3 for the 3 channels times 86 is 258. The Hebrew word for throat, garon, is 259. So with the kolel, the word as a whole, they are equal. Garon, throat, and 3 Elokims are the same. Go ahead, Jim, the next 2 paragraphs.
Pharaoh was facing the neck, sitting and feeding off of it. There are 3 channels of sustenance in the neck: the trachea, esophagus, and the blood vessels. The blood vessels are probably the 2 common carotid arteries which supply blood to the brain.
Go ahead.
There are 3 names Elokim, whose numerical value plus the kolel is the same as the word for throat, garon, 259. Elokim, Aleph, Lamed, He, Yud, Mem, 1 plus 30 plus 5 plus 10 plus 40 equals 86. 3 times 86, 258. Garon, Gimel, Resh, Vav, Nun, 3 plus 200 plus 6 plus 50, 259. The name Elokim signifies contraction, simsum. In this context, the contraction of life force flowing from the head to the torso.
All right. Yosef personified the Brit Halashon, covenant of the tongue. In simple terms, this means treating speech as a sacred art, only speaking matters of holiness and respect and avoiding speaking profanity. The gematria of the Hebrew word for tongue, lashon, is 30 plus 300 plus 6 plus 50, 386, the same as 2 names Elokim. Wait, before we said 3 times 86 is only 258. Over here, the gematria, 2 names Elokim is 386. That's over 100 more. Gonna be fancy math, guys. Okay, stay in your seats. The gematria of Elokim is 86. That's simple and straightforward. The second Elokim, we're going to pull some funny business. The gematria of expanded spelling of Elokim is Aleph, 1 plus 30 plus 80. Lamed, 30 plus 40 plus 4. He, 5 plus 10. Yud, 10 plus 6 plus 4. And Mem, 40 plus 40, which gives us 300. So 86 and 86 and 300 is 386. What was 386? The word for Lashon, tongue. And it's two Elokims. One is a straight gematria, and the second is gematria of expanded spelling. Okay, Jim, continue.
So Joseph manifested the covenant of the tongue, which includes them all. This is also evident from the fact that the numerical value of the word for tongue, Lashon, 386, is that of two names Elohim, one simple 86 and one spelled out with Yuds, 300. The covenant of the tongue is first alluded to in Sefer Yetzirah, being mentioned as opposite the other covenant, that of the sexual organ. These two organs, that of speech and sexuality, represent the individual's potential to influence the outside world, since these are the two main locations of exchange and contact between the individual and his environment. A possibly unrectified world, they must be guarded, their holiness preserved, hence two covenants. Two covenants are mutually dependent. If a person's sexuality is unrectified, so will be his speech, vice versa. Thus, Joseph, who personifies sexual purity, plays the role of purity of speech, which is the opposite of the degenerateness of Egypt. We see here how holy speech has the effect of blocking the passage of unholy speech. We see here how unholy speech has the effect of blocking the passage of holy energy from the intellect head to the emotions. It's like happening all the time, but that's fine. Lashon Lamed Shin Vav Nun equals 30 plus 300 plus 6 plus 50 plus 386. Elohim spelled out with Yuds, Aleph Lamed Pei Lamed Mem Daled Hey Yud, Yud Vav Daled Mem equals 1 plus 30 plus 80 plus 30 plus 40 plus 4 plus 5 plus 10 plus 10 plus 6 plus 4 plus 40 plus 40 equals 300.
Okay. Well, anyone want to elaborate on the holiness of speech?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So at the beginning of the paragraph on the other page, Joseph manifested the covenant of the tongue, which includes them all. Them all what? I should know that.
That's a good question. I was trying to figure that out before. What I thought I filled it in. I think it means all three sides. What we're going to say is that the three channels in the throat, trachea it leans towards chesed, I think, and the esophagus leads to the left and gvura, and the blood vessels are in the center. And Yosef is the holy is the corresponds to this, but in holiness, the counterpart. Yosef is the counterpart to this in holiness. So he's in the center, he includes them all, meaning chesed, gvura, and tiferes, right, left, and center.
Okay, thank you.
I fixed it in the next one in 13. I could tell you there's in Hebrew, you know that the word for pig is chazer. Everybody knows Hebrew or Yiddish. It's mentioned in the Torah. Because the pig is so reviled, looked at in a negative way, so very often they'll use a euphemism for pig. Instead of writing chazer, they'll write davar acher, something else, the other thing. So you'll see in a lot of times, instead of writing that, you'll see davar acher and something else that refers to the pig. I once I think I was pretty young. I was listening to for bringing in of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Could be I was in Chicago at the time, so I was probably bar mitzvah age, yeah, before bar mitzvah. And the Rebbe mentioned Dalet Aleph. Dalet Aleph is initials for Davar Acher, something else. So not only the Rebbe didn't say the Hebrew word for pig, he didn't say the euphemism Davar Acher. He went a step further and said, and just referred to it by its initials, Dalet Aleph. And generally, you can see how careful he was. That's just one example, but in general, you can see how careful he was in speech. Maybe not as blatant and obvious as this, it's standing out, but to avoid avoid terms or if there was a sensitive topic, to couch it in very gentle way, like it's just an allusion to it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. 13. The tongue personified by Yosef includes all sides, right and left. The blood vessels in the neck are the center and include the other two channels. Since the blood vessels correspond to the minister of meat, Yosef was sold to him and not to the other ministers, who personify the trachea and esophagus. The next section explains this. So yeah, we have to be patient for this. Okay, Jim, go ahead.
This is why Joseph was sold to the chief butcher, for this aspect of evil comprises three facets, corresponding to the trachea, esophagus, and the blood vessels, which were embodied by Pharaoh's three deputies, the chief butler, the chief baker, and the chief butcher, respectively. We're using the term chief butler to translate the Hebrew deputy in charge of drink. Chief bartender sounds too undignified.
Okay, I went through this last week. That how I've taught them as like the equivalent of secretaries in the president's cabinet. So maybe they had the rights to that area, to all the meat, to all the wine, and they sold licenses, they awarded licenses, they had government contracts. It was probably lucrative, and then like on special occasions, they would be the one to serve the king. That's my own take on it. Okay, so the minister of drinks personified the trachea. If I understand properly, it's on the right. Even though the trachea must remain dry and seems to be the opposite of drink, the heat from the lungs exemplify gvura. Trachea attracts moisture that cools it. So question is, why would the minister of drinks correspond to trachea, which is dry? The trachea attracts moisture that cools it and then helps the heart pump. This represents gvura that is tempered by chesed. And just a minute. This is also seen on the lion and the heavenly throne in the prophetic vision of the prophet Yechezkel. On the four sides of the throne, the lion faces to the right. The Hebrew word for lion, aryeh, has a gematria of 216, the same as gvura. That fits. Yet, the lion is on the right, showing that gvura and chesed commingle, or the gvura has been tempered by chesed. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Chief butler corresponded to the trachea. True, no liquid can enter the trachea. So how can we assert that the chief butler corresponds to it? The answer is that the lungs are particularly hot, and they therefore exemplify gvura. As is stated in the Zohar, the lion faces the right, the numerical value of gvura being the same as that for the word for lion, aryeh. It tends toward the right in order that Chesed and Gevurah interinclude. Therefore, since it's so hot, it draws itself to itself all types of moisture and thereby cools off, then fans the heat. This is why the chief butler corresponds to the trachea. We exhale hot air, indicating that the lungs are naturally hot. Heat and fire exemplify Gevurah, power and strength. The lion, the strongest beast, also exemplifies Gevurah, yet in Ezekiel's vision of the chariot, it is on the right side, the side of Chesed. This signifies rectified Gevurah, that is Gevurah tempered by Chesed. Gevurah is Gimel Beit Vav Reish Hey, 3 + 2 + 6 + 200 + 5, 216. Aryeh is Aleph Reish Yud Hey, which is 1 + 20 + 10 + 5, 216.
Plus 200,
Pardon?
plus 200, not 20.
Oh, 200, right.
Thank you.
1 + 200 + 10 + 5, right.
The minister of baking personified the esophagus corresponding to Gevurah. I assume that it is to the left. Go ahead.
Chief baker corresponds to the esophagus, which in turn corresponds to Gevurah. The baker bakes bread, the staff of life, the main food, swallowed by the esophagus.
And the minister of meat corresponds to the blood vessels, which are in the middle of the throat. There are 2 blood vessels, one to the right and one to the left.
Chief butcher corresponds to blood vessels in the middle of the neck. There are 2 such blood vessels leaning in either direction. The butcher slaughters the animal, draining its blood. He therefore is associated with blood vessels.
And Yosef is inclusive of both right and left, Chesed and Gevurah. When Yosef heard the ministers of drink and baking were distressed because of their dreams, he said, oh, this is going to be the next one. Go ahead, one more line, Jim.
Okay, so Joseph, as we said, and this answered the question before, which is exactly what you said, corresponds to all these aspects on the side of holiness. So he's
Okay.
the 3 on the side of holiness.
Yes, okay, thank you. Now, when Yosef heard the ministers of drink and baking were distressed because of their dreams, he said, are not interpretations of Hashem? Please tell me. Klipa only is connected with Hashem's name Elokim, not Havaya. Yosef meant, you ministers of Egypt rely on Elokim for your life force. But in order to explain the meaning of the dream, it was necessary to connect to the name Havaya. So Yosef said, please tell me. Since he did have a connection to Havaya. Paro, on the other hand, told Moshe, I do not know Havaya. Okay, go ahead, Avigail, page 311 in the middle.
This is the meaning of the verse. Do not interpretations of dreams belong to God, Elohim. Please tell me your dream. Since interpretations come from Yosef, he therefore said, please tell me. He meant, since you derive your sustenance and are governed entirely by the name Elohim, this being the meaning of, do not the interpretations of your life belong to God, Elohim? You, Pharaoh, have no conception of the name Havaya, only of the name Elohim. And indeed, Pharaoh said, I do not know Havaya. He had no connection to this name. On the contrary, when the name is revealed, Pharaoh and the evil he personifies are completely destroyed.
Okay. They were sure the plagues came from Elohim, and they thought they could handle anything that came from Elohim. It wasn't until the Red Sea that they declared Havaya fights for them in Egypt, and they wanted to escape because they realized they were up against Havaya. It's like bringing a knife to the gunfight. Okay, go ahead, Abigail.
You mean the opposites, like bringing a gun to the knife fight?
For the Egyptians.
Oh,
The
okay.
Egyptians the Egyptians brought the knife, or maybe a
Yeah.
handle, just the knife handle to the gun.
Okay. Pharaoh and the Egyptians therefore did not recognize that this name is what was attacking them in the plagues. Only at the sea did they finally recognize this, as they said, I will flee from the Israelites, for Haviah is fighting for them. This implies that until then, they thought that the plagues came from the name Elohim. They therefore did not fear them, for they too had a connection to the name Elohim. But once they realized that the plagues originated in the name Haviah, they said, I will flee, because it threatened to destroy them completely.
Okay.
That I did not know.
This answers the questions we asked at the beginning of the chapter. Why Hashem, we asked 3 questions. Why Hashem said, in order that I place these signs of mine in his midst. Why did he say these signs? He should have said just the plagues. And why does he say in his midst? The Hebrew word for signs, osasai, also means letters. Hashem said he would place these letters of his name, meaning Haviah, in the midst of Paro, for Paro to feel the effect of Haviah. We did have this last week, I think. We also said osasai means these letters, and osos yud, these 10 letters. I think it was the expanded spelling of Haviah. So this the same idea. So Hashem says, I'm going to need to put the letters of Haviah, and stick it to Paro in his midst.
Weren't the plagues through Elohim?
Why do you say that? Explain.
Kevavke is the attribute of kindness, not necessarily destruction. Elohim would be destruction. So, not the plagues produced through Elohim.
You all hear the question?
Mhm.
Okay. The
Plagues undo the natural process of the world. So they have to come from Haviah because it's outside nature. It's transcendent.
That's what I would have said. The natural order of the world is from Elohim. And Paro didn't understand how the natural order could be disrupted.
The Kevavke represents chesed, which is kindness. So for destruction to occur, unless sometimes evil brings on good, I guess I'm just hung up on that.
Can you say that it sounds like you're saying that you see Haviah and Elohim as equals, 2 sides, Hesed Gevurah kind of thing, but maybe I'm wrong. Haviah is all encompassing, right? And
Right.
Elohim is a subset.
Right.
We had
Haviah
this-
is transcendent.
We had
So
this a week
Haviah
ago.
contains Gevurah too.
In simple terms, Haviah is like the power source.
Right.
So
and
Gevurah is
Elohim-
inside there.
Elohim is going to be the power station that
Right.
transmits the electricity, that transmits the power, sending it. It's not, 1,000,000 watts over here. It's dividing it into something that's manageable.
Gives it structure.
Elohim, right? So you need the Elohim. You can't go straight from a power source straight to a world, straight to your house and stuff. It needs to be taken under control. It needs to be controlled, regulated. And that's Elohim. So the natural order of the world is run by Elohim. How do you get to supernatural? How do you override the natural order of the world? You have Haviah has to override Elohim, like with a power surge.
Do you know when they say
I
the
don't
sun
think it
coming up
bypasses
every
all
morning is a
Elohim. Let me ask you
miracle?
this,
That's
okay.
not true, is it?
Say again.
You know how they say the sun coming up every morning is a miracle? People are so used to it, they don't realize But that's not true. The sun coming up every morning is Elohim. That's absolutely not a miracle. That is the order of the world.
And the order of the world could also be a miracle. Yeah, I just saw something on this in the last few weeks. I don't know if it was in here. I don't know where it was, but I don't remember what their bottom line was. But yeah, it's not supernatural. The natural itself is a miracle.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to happen.
It's that which fills the world, and then that which surrounds everything, like Mimali Kalam and Sovi Kalam.
Yeah.
You look at it that way.
Okay. Did we?
I don't know. We just
Okay, top of 312.
we
We
went
got
off.
312. Downtown Chicago.
This is why God now said to Moshe, come to Pharaoh in order that I place these signs of mine. That is, do not think that I'm going to relate to him through the name Elohim and that the plagues are going to originate in the name Elohim, to which he has some connection. Rather, I am going to place these signs of mine in his midst, meaning my name Havaya. This also explains the use of the phrase in his midst, referring to the way God is going to relate to Pharaoh. The word for signs, otot, is similar to the word for letters, otoit.
Otiot.
Otiot. Inasmuch as letters are symbols for the sounds they represent. Thus, mystically, this phrase may mean, in order that I place the letters of my true name, Havaya, in his midst. His midst means in his consciousness.
Okay. This is also the meaning of Yosef's answer to Paro. Yosef said to Paro, Elokim Yanes Shlom Paro. Hashem, Paro said to Yosef, I heard that you tell dreams. I heard that you're a dream teller. What's a dream teller between me and you? It's when you drive in certain neighborhoods and there's a storefront and it says, palm reader and tarot cards. I think there is or was a place at the X. I don't know if it's still there. I think there's also a travel agency. I passed one on Sunday.
There's one in
There you
East Long Meadow now. That's I can't remember. It's across the street from the softball field. That's the only thing I can think of. But it's
Okay.
the spirit reader of somebody at East Long Meadow. New one just popped up.
All right, near Dunkin' Donuts or near the ski house?
Near the ski house place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you see them around and you don't notice it unless you're looking for it. I teach this, so I kind of look for it. So, these people are like the medicine man, the Indian medicine man. They weren't regarded as holy people. They were regarded as weird people, and people avoid them. So Paro says to him, I heard you a soothsayer. I heard you're a dream teller. And Yosef's answer was, Bil Adai, it's not me. Elokim will respond to Paro. So anyways, Yosef said to Paro, you only relate to Hashem through Elokim. But since I relate through Havaya, and I include both Chesed and Gvura, I am able to interpret the dreams. But you will not be able to. I think I followed the English. The Hebrew does not say Paro. I think it's Yosef's answer to the baker dude and the butler dude. The ministers of drinks and baking. That's how I used to call them when I taught it in class. And I'm going to correct that because the words he uses are the words he said to the minister of drinks and the minister of baking. It says, you guys relate to Hashem through Elohim, So you won't know what the dream, you can't figure it out. Therefore, he said, Sapru Nali, tell me the dream, because I have that connection. On the page before we said, please tell me your dream, since interpretations come from Yosef. And he said, please tell me. Okay, go ahead, Avigail. This is what?
This is what Yosef meant in his reply to Pharaoh. God relates to you presently only through his name Elohim, and this is why the interpretation of your dreams is through this name. Therefore, please tell them to me, since I comprise all these levels and I can therefore interpret them. As said above, Yosef, epitomizing the covenant of the tongue, comprised all the holy aspects corresponding to the deputies of Pharaoh.
The minister of drinks told his dream to Yosef. The vine had 3 branches corresponding to the 3 ministers, or 3 channels of the throat. The word for minister is sar, sin reish, 300 and 200. We showed before, number 12, that the expanded spelling of Elohim is 300. The regressive iteration of Elohim is 200, as follows. Regressive iteration means the first letter, you do all the letters, then all the letters without the last letter, then again all the letters without the second to last letter, and so on. So it means the first letter is 5 times, second letter is 4 times, third letter is 3 times, fourth letter is twice, and last letter is once. And that comes out to 1 times 5, 30 times 4, 5 times 3, 10 times 2, and 40 times 1. 5 plus 120 plus 15 plus 20 plus 40 is 200. So each letter of minister, Sar, is connected by gematria to Elohim. Okay? It's not the simple gematria. To a more advanced or complicated by gematria, it's connected to Elohim. Okay, go ahead. How many more of these do I have? Wow. Okay, go ahead, Abigail.
Thus, when the chief butler related his dream, it was all in proper order. He said the vine had 3 branches, these being the 3 deputies. The word for deputy, Sar, represents 2 names, Elohim, one in the regressive iteration and the other spelled out with the letter Yud. Sar is sin resh. The numerical value of the letter sin is 300, that of resh is 200. We have seen how the name Elohim, when spelled out using the Yud, has the numerical value of 300. The regressive iteration of the Elohim is as the rabbi just read to us. Okay. Thus, the word for deputy implies the name Elohim, and the 3 deputies were 3 names Elohim as above.
Yeah, we need to fix that. Here it is. Okay. After explaining the dream to the minister of drinks, Yosef asked him to mention him to Paro for a presidential pardon. Yosef thought he would be attached to the minister of drinks, who was for Chesed, being that Yosef actually personified Yesod. Yesod is the 9th of the spheres, and he was in the center. It was appropriate for him to be attached to the minister of meat, who was his original owner and whose daughter Yosef married after leaving prison. So Yosef was mistaken in this. He was looking to the minister of drinks. Go ahead, Abigail.
Yosef interpreted his dream. You will put Pharaoh's cup, ... He hoped that he would be connected to him and be on the right side and thereby be rescued through him. After interpreting the chief butler's dream and saying that he will be spared, Yosef asked him to remember him to Pharaoh and have him freed from jail.
Continue.
But at that point, he was connected to the chief butler, who was in the middle. That is why he later married his daughter. Yosef mistakenly thought to connect himself to Chesed when in fact he was connected to Tiferes. Yosef, personifying Yesod, is firmly grounded in the middle axis of the Sephiros. It was thus not proper for him to seek salvation from someone associated with the right axis. Sexual fidelity and purity is about balance, not leaning toward one extreme. Yosef married Osnat, the daughter of Potiphar, the chief butcher.
Okay, we have one more. As we said, the minister of baking was Gevura on the left. He began his dream with the word af, meaning also, as in also I in my dream. But af is more commonly used to mean anger. The Medrash says the fact he started telling his dream with this word was an indication to Yosef that there would be a negative outcome. In fact, the Medrash says on 3 occasions, someone's statement begins, now it's someone. The statement begins with the word af, all with negative outcomes. The snake in the Garden of Eden introduced himself to Chava with the word af. Did Hashem not say, not to eat any tree of the garden? Af ki amar lakim. The second was the minister of drinks, right? A minister of baking, right here.
Yeah.
Afani b'chalomi, I too in my dream. And the third was Haman aflo hevia Esther Malka, when he left after the first party, he left the queen's party.
Mhm.
And Mordechai was standing there. Mordechai didn't bow to him. He got real angry. He called a meeting, and he said, "Aflo hevia Esther Malka, Kimosi." He said, Esther didn't even invite anyone else except for me to the party with the king. So all 3 of them began with the word af, and they all had spectacular downfalls. Okay, that's the next one, the chief baker.
The chief baker began his dream with the word even, off. This signifies the addition of Gevura and strength, even though he also mentioned 3 wicker baskets, signifying the 3 deputies, as they each inter-include the others, this being why he mentioned all 3 only after he said the word even. Yosef turned his dream upside down and interpreted it to mean that he would die. This was evidently because the word even indicated that the chief baker emphasized Gevura too much. The word for even, off, also means anger, a manifestation of excess, unrectified Gevura.
Okay, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different dots that are connected. And we found 3 different ways, 3 different gematrias for the name Elohim. We had 86, 200, and 300.
Yep.
How long have I been in this class, Rabbi? This is the first week where the gematria was actually meaningful to
Okay,
me in my Torah learning. It took this long.
you're slipping.
It's exciting. I know.
What's also very
Does
interesting
this
is
mean I'll do better in math?
I discovered another connection in that many historians have said that when Moses came to Pharaoh regarding the 10 plagues, it was Ramses II who was the most powerful pharaoh in ancient Egypt. And Ramses really means Ra Meses. And Meses means born of, so it means born of Ra.
Oh.
Meses means born of, so born of Ra, and Ra was the ultimate ruler, was the god that they all prayed to. So that's what gave the Pharaoh the ability to think or believe that they were of a godly nature, right? So if born of God is creation, that's Elohim. That's how Pharaoh knew only Elohim and did not know Yud K, Vav K. Just click. Ties it together.
Bingo. Okay. Okay, we're gonna start mincha.
Good class.
Another name.
Okay, thank you.
All
Good
right.
night, everybody.
Ciao.
Good night. Good night. Have a great week.
Good night. Thanks.
Yeah,